And so it's recording. So good afternoon. My name is Jose Contreras, and this is my informative speech. I have my audience, and I'm going to let my audience introduce themselves. Anybody can go first.
Hi, my name is Sylvia de los Santos, and I am a co-worker of Jose's.
Hello, my name is Yvette Ibarra, and I am also a co-worker of Jose's.
Hello, my name is Joe, and I'm one of Jose's co-workers as well.
I think you're muted, Joe.
My name is Joe. I am Jose's colleague as well.
I think it's Amanda left.
Okay, I'm just making sure. My name's Amanda Diaz. I'm a friend of Jose.
Cool. And so here are my two index cards with my information on. And so without further ado, I'll go ahead and start my informative speech. So my informative speech is about Ryan White. And Ryan White was an inspiration to a lot of people to continue the HIV/AIDS fight and discrimination for anybody who was living with HIV and AIDS. He was diagnosed at the age of 13. He was a hemophiliac, which is a medical condition that does not allow the blood to clot like it should. And so at the age of 13, he was diagnosed with AIDS. He was one of the first kids with hemophilia to be diagnosed with AIDS, right? And at that time, we're talking about early 1980s, AIDS was something that was still being developed. We didn't have enough information about it. And with the information that we did have, it still lacked a lot of resources that we have today, right? So the information, the education that was out there was not very useful as the information that we have now. So during the early 1980s, CDC came out with the universal precautions. And the universal precautions were guidelines for healthcare workers to follow, such as wearing gloves, wearing masks, gowns, and other safety precaution equipment in order for them to deal and work with patients, right? And so it was because of the AIDS epidemic that we now have those particular guidelines in place. So Ryan White was only given 3 to 6 months to live when he was diagnosed with AIDS. And so for about 1.5 years, he didn't attend school. After he started getting healthy, he continuously asked his mom if he can attend school. And she was very adamant about going through with that. However, she gave in, they went to the school, and then the school denied the entry for him to come back. And this sparked a huge, huge issue nationally because he wanted to go to school and the school didn't allow him because they were discriminating against him for having AIDS. A lot of the parents were fearful that if they came across Ryan White, there could potentially be exposure. Their kids could potentially become infected. And so his main concern was he didn't want to take 7th grade all over again. This is the reason why he wanted to go back to school. He was healthy, he wanted to do it, but the school didn't allow him. So they started to rally outside of the school, protesting for him to go back to school. And at the same time, the same community where he lived at would go to his house and rallied outside his house to not allow him to go to school. To the point where at one time, his house was burned down by the same people that he trusted, or the same people that he would go to school with, all because they were scared. There was fear there. So they decided to take this particular case to court, not once, but many times, to try to get experts to come in there, doctors, scientists to come in there and explain what AIDS was and how he could easily go back to school without having to worry about any of those things. But it didn't work. People still didn't want him to come to school. And so because of that, he became national attention. Because he was young, he wanted to go to school, and he couldn't go to school. But he used his attention to educate people, right? He went out into the world, he did interviews and talked to people about what it was living with AIDS. He educated people about AIDS not only affecting gay men, but affecting anybody susceptible to HIV and AIDS. He educated people about the ways you can contract HIV and AIDS, such as unprotected sex, blood transfusions, and injecting needles, injecting drugs. And he was so amazed at how many times he had to repeat himself with the same information over and over and over, the same issues and the same topics to be discussed. It just amused him because he didn't think that he needed to repeat himself that many times for somebody to understand and somebody to get it. But because of his dedication, he developed relationships with a lot of people that were in high ranks, right? Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Taylor went before Congress to demand assistance for people that were living with HIV and AIDS. Michael Jackson befriended him and was his friend all the way until he died. He actually bought him a red Mustang, which was his first car, and that was one of his favorite cars. He wanted a red Mustang, and Michael Jackson just bought him that red Mustang. At the end, when Ryan White died, Michael Jackson also wrote and produced a song called Gone Too Soon in memory of Ryan White. At his funeral, Elton John, Howie Long, Phil Donahue, and Barbara Bush were in attendance, and former President Ronald Reagan wrote a tribute about him. As we move on, Ryan White died on April 8th of 1990. And during the early 90s, there was a lot of medications coming out, right? There was so many medications coming out that it was hard for people to keep up with that. And so not only were these medications expensive, but they were also hard to obtain. So Ryan White died on April 8th, 1990, 2 months before graduation. And his mother picked up where he had left off. Ms. Ginger White, Ryan White's mother. She picked up and she continued the advocacy for him. And on August 18th of 1990, right, 4 months after his death, the Ryan White Care Act was signed into law. And the Ryan White Care Act helped individuals who were living with HIV and AIDS and provided assistance to them, such as medications, doctor visits, emergency financial assistance, housing, amongst all other types of basic needs for somebody who's living with HIV and AIDS. Ryan White made more than an impact during his life and even more after his death. His dedication and his compassion shaped the way that somebody who was living with HIV lived. He turned his negative diagnoses and all the negative things that came with that into something positive to fight for individuals who were living with HIV and AIDS, fighting for people who ran into a lot of barriers through their lives. And he even taught us that just because you have a diagnosis like that, you shouldn't stop. You should keep going. I hope that my speech has been informative, and I hope that it has inspired you to learn more about Ryan White. And that's all I got for y'all.